Hey there! Grab yourself a coffee and enjoy the story.
Emily Sutton stared at the ceiling of her guest bedroom, counting the shadows cast by the early morning light. 5 months, 153 nights of sleeping alone, despite the gold band on her finger that promised partnership and intimacy. The sound of her husband's shower running in the master bathroom down the hall only amplified her isolation. The water shut off, and like clockwork, she heard the bathroom door open, followed by the precise footsteps of Nathaniel Reynolds preparing for work. Emily rolled onto her side, pretending to be asleep as he passed her room. He never looked in, never knocked. The polite distance Nate maintained was surgical in its precision. Courteous hellos over breakfast, discussions about bills or household matters, even occasional laughter over a TV show they both enjoyed. But at night, always the same words. "Sleep well, Emily," before retreating to his separate bedroom and locking the door behind him. When they'd met at her friend Jessica's gallery opening a year ago, Nate had seemed perfect, handsome in a distinguished way, successful at his investment firm, attentive to her words as though they were precious gems. Their courtship had been swift and intense. He'd won over her friends, charmed her parents, and most importantly, her grandmother Martha had approved. A solid man, the 85-year-old matriarch had declared from her sprawling estate in Connecticut, where Emily had spent many childhood summers. He looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life. But the question, whatever it was, remained unanswered after their wedding. Emily had expected their honeymoon to be the beginning of physical intimacy, but Nate had made excuses. Jet lag, stomach problems from foreign food, headaches. When they returned home to their new house, purchased with Nate's savings and a generous gift from grandmother Martha, he had shown her to the guest bedroom. "I thrash in my sleep," he'd explained. "You'll rest better in here, just until I get help for it." Months later, the temporary arrangement had calcified into routine. Any attempt by Emily to breach the walls around her husband was met with kind but firm redirection. "I care about you too much to subject you to this," he would say, or "I'm working through some things. Please be patient with me." And because she had promised to love him in sickness and in health, Emily had been patient. The front door clicked shut. Nate had left for work without saying goodbye. Another small rejection in a marriage built on them. Emily's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. "Please tell me you're free for coffee." Her best friend's voice came through, warm and familiar. "The gallery is dead this morning and I'm dying for human contact." "You're a lifesaver," Emily said, already reaching for clothes in the dresser that contained her entire life now. Usual place in 20 minutes. 40 minutes later, nestled in the corner of their favorite cafe, Jessica's expression darkened as Emily finally unloaded the truth she'd been hiding from everyone. "What do you mean, no intimacy?" Jessica asked, leaning forward, her voice hushed despite the cafe's morning bustle. "Like, none at all?" "Nothing," Emily confirmed, staring into her untouched latte. "We don't have any kind of intimacy." "He makes me sleep in a different bedroom from his," she revealed, the admission burning her throat like acid. "I've never even seen him without a shirt. It's like living with a polite stranger who remembers my birthday." Jessica reached across the table and squeezed Emily's trembling hand. That's not a marriage. That's a roommate situation with extra paperwork." "I know," Emily whispered, tears threatening. "I feel like I'm going crazy. He's perfect in every other way. Remembers how I take my coffee, listens when I talk about work, buys thoughtful gifts. But then he just retreats. And I don't know why." She swallowed hard. "I've started wondering if there's something wrong with me." "Stop that right now," Jessica said firmly. "There is nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with this situation." She paused, considering her next words carefully. "Emily, have you considered that he might be hiding something?" Emily looked up sharply. "Like what?" "I don't know. Another relationship? Some health issue he's not sharing? People don't usually avoid intimacy with someone they supposedly love without a reason." The suggestion sent a cold wave through Emily's chest. She'd been so focused on what she might be doing wrong that she hadn't fully considered what Nate might be concealing. "But why marry me in the first place?" Jessica shrugged, her eyes full of concern. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What did he gain by marrying you?" The question hung between them, unopened and dangerous, because deep down, Emily knew there was one answer that made terrible sense. Grandmother Martha's fortune. Her health had been declining for years, and everyone knew Emily was her favorite, set to inherit the majority of her estate. Had that been Nate's endgame all along? The thought made her sick. I need to find out the truth, Emily said finally, squaring her shoulders. Whatever it is. And if it's something you can't forgive? Jessica asked softly. Emily stared out the window at people passing by, living their normal lives with their normal marriages and normal problems. Then at least I'll know why I've been sleeping alone for 5 months, won't I? When Emily returned home that afternoon, the house was silent. The same pristine, emotionless shell it had been since they moved in. She walked through rooms decorated with furniture they'd selected together, past photos of their wedding day where they both smiled like they meant it. Had it all been an act? Emily stopped before a particularly striking photo. Nate looking at her with what she had once believed was adoration as she cut their wedding cake. Now the expression in his eyes seemed calculating, assessing. She moved purposefully toward Nate's bedroom, her heart hammering against her ribs. In 5 months of marriage, she'd respected his privacy, never once entering his sanctuary without permission. Today, that would change. Emily placed her hand on the doorknob, half expecting it to be locked, but it turned easily under her palm. The door swung open to reveal nothing extraordinary. A perfectly made bed with navy sheets, a nightstand with a lamp and a book about financial markets, a dresser with neatly folded clothes visible through half-open drawers. His closet door stood partially open, suits and dress shirts arranged by color. It was the room of someone organized and meticulous, but there were no obvious secrets, no hidden photos, no mysterious items that explained his behavior. Emily sank onto the edge of his bed, deflated. What had she expected to find? A shrine to another woman? Evidence of a secret life? The normalcy of the room made her feel both relieved and foolish. Her phone rang, startling her back to reality. Grandmother Martha's assisted living facility. Emily answered immediately, her throat tight with concern. Mrs. Reynolds? This is Sunrise Living calling about Martha Sutton, a professional voice explained. Your grandmother had a bit of a fall. Nothing broken, but the doctor would like someone from the family to come in. She's asking for you specifically. I'll be there in 30 minutes, Emily promised, already heading for the door. Martha Sutton had once been a force of nature, a self-made businesswoman who had built a real estate empire after her husband's early death. Now, at 85, her body was failing her, though her mind remained sharp as ever. When Emily entered her suite at the upscale facility, Martha was propped up in bed, looking annoyed at the fuss being made over her. There's my girl, Martha said, extending a frail hand adorned with an emerald ring that had been her signature for decades. Tell these vultures I'm not ready for the grave yet. Emily kissed her grandmother's papery cheek, inhaling the familiar scent of Chanel No. 5. The nurse said you fell? Tripped over that ridiculous ottoman they insist on keeping in my path, Martha dismissed. But now that you're here, sit. You look terrible, dear. Emily half laughed, half sighed. Grandmother Martha had never been one to sugarcoat anything. Thanks a lot. It's those shadows under your eyes, and you've lost weight. Martha's gaze was penetrating. Trouble in paradise already? The question, so direct and unexpected, broke something in Emily. To her horror, tears welled up and spilled over before she could stop them. Through hiccuping sobs, the whole story came tumbling out. The separate bedrooms, the polite distance, the complete absence of physical affection. Everything except her new suspicion about Nate's motives, which she couldn't bring herself to voice to the grandmother who had championed their relationship. Martha listened silently, her lined face growing more severe with each revelation. When Emily finally ran out of words, the old woman reached for the water glass beside her bed with a slightly trembling hand. Have you asked him directly why? She finally said. Every time I try, he deflects. Says he's working through personal issues, or that he just needs time. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I feel like I'm living with a ghost. Martha's expression hardened. I've known many men in my 8 decades on this earth, Emily. The good ones, the bad ones, and all types in between. But one thing I know for certain. When a man keeps that kind of distance, he's hiding something significant. That's what Jessica said too. Smart girl, that one. Martha shifted in her bed, wincing slightly. The bigger question is whether you're prepared to discover what it is. Some truths change everything, you know. Emily stared at her hands, at the wedding band that felt increasingly like a shackle. I need to know. I can't live like this anymore. Martha nodded once, decisive. Then you'll need to be clever about it. Men like that, the secretive ones, they don't reveal themselves easily. She reached for Emily's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Promise me something? Anything, Grandma. When you find out, whatever it is, you'll act in your own best interest. Not his, not mine, yours. Martha's blue eyes, faded with age but still fierce, held Emily's. Your grandfather was a good man who loved me completely. I won't see you settle for less. The drive home was a blur of swirling thoughts and half-formed plans. Emily pulled into the driveway just as the sky opened up, rain pelting down in a sudden summer squall. She sat in her car, watching water stream down the windshield, obscuring the perfect house she shared with a stranger. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nate. Working late? Don't wait up. Another night alone. Another dismissal. Something hardened in Emily's chest. Not quite resolve, not quite anger, but a crystallization of both. Tomorrow, she would begin searching for answers, whatever the cost. Morning arrived with harsh clarity. Sunlight streaming through curtains Emily had forgotten to close. She reached for her phone. 7:15, and a missed call from Jessica. Before she could return it, the sound of a heavy thud followed by shattering glass jolted her upright. "Nate?" she called, scrambling out of bed. No response. She rushed into the hallway and found him collapsed on the floor near the front door, his briefcase spilled open beside him, a broken water glass in shards around his still form. He was already dressed for work, as if he'd been on his way out. "Nate!" Emily dropped to her knees beside him, heedless of the glass. His face was ashen, a thin sheen of sweat on his forehead. When she touched his cheek, his skin burned against her palm. "Nate, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Emily fumbled for her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. "My husband collapsed," she told the dispatcher, her voice unnaturally high. "He's unconscious and burning up with fever." The 8 minutes it took for the ambulance to arrive stretched into an eternity. Emily gathered Nate's wallet and insurance card, trying to remember if he had any medical conditions he'd mentioned. She realized with a pang how little she truly knew about the man she'd married. The EMTs worked efficiently, loading Nate onto a stretcher after a quick assessment. "Appears to be severe dehydration and high fever," one told her as they wheeled him out. "Has he been ill?" I don't know," Emily admitted, the words bitter on her tongue. He didn't say anything. At the hospital, Emily was directed to a waiting area while doctors examined Nate. She called Jessica, the words tumbling out in a confused rush. "I'm coming right now," Jessica said firmly. "Don't move." 20 minutes later, Jessica arrived with coffee and a reassuring hug. "Any news?" "Nothing yet," Emily said, clutching the paper cup like a lifeline. "I feel so stupid, Jess. I didn't even know he was sick. What kind of wife doesn't notice her husband has a fever of 103? The kind whose husband deliberately keeps her at arm's length," Jessica replied, her tone gentle but firm. "This isn't on you, Em." A nurse approached them, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Reynolds? Your husband is stable now. We've got him on IV fluids and antipyretics, medication to bring down his fever," she clarified. "The doctor believes it's a severe case of influenza, possibly complicated by extreme fatigue and stress. He's asking for you." Emily nodded, following the nurse through double doors into the treatment area. The nurse led her to a curtained cubicle, checking the chart before pushing the curtain aside. "Here you go, Vanessa," the nurse said kindly. "Your husband's just starting to come around." Emily froze. "Excuse me? My name isn't Vanessa." The nurse blinked in confusion, glancing down at her chart. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have mixed up the rooms. You're Emily Reynolds, correct?" "Yes," Emily confirmed, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. "Vanessa?" Why would the nurse call her Vanessa? Recovering quickly, the nurse ushered her inside. "The doctor will be in shortly to discuss discharge instructions." Nate lay on the hospital bed, an IV dripping fluid into his arm, his complexion still waxy, but eyes now open. When he saw Emily, something flickered across his face, relief quickly masked by what looked almost like wariness. "Hey," he said, his voice raspy. "Sorry about the drama." Emily moved to the bedside, studying his face. "Why didn't you tell me you were feeling sick?" "Didn't want to worry you," he murmured, shifting slightly and wincing. "It came on suddenly last night." Emily nodded. Not believing him for a second, she noticed his pants had been removed, probably to make him more comfortable, leaving him in a hospital gown and boxer shorts. As he moved again, the gown shifted, exposing his right thigh, and there it was, dark ink against his pale skin, a tattoo she'd never seen before, never even known existed, a feminine script spelling out Vanessa, with a lipstick kiss mark beside it. The room tilted slightly. Emily gripped the side rail of the bed to steady herself. "What's wrong?" Nate asked, following her gaze. Horror dawned in his eyes as he realized what she was seeing. He yanked the gown down to cover the tattoo, but it was too late. "Who's Vanessa?" Emily asked, her voice startlingly calm despite the roaring in her ears. Nate swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. "It's not what you think." "Really?" "Because I think it's exactly what it looks like." Emily's hand tightened on the rail. "Is she the reason you won't touch me? The reason you lock your bedroom door at night?" "Emily, please." Nate tried to sit up, grimacing as the movement pulled at his IV. "I can explain." "I'm listening," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. Nate ran a hand over his face. "It's from before we met, an old relationship that ended badly. I was going to have it removed, but..." He trailed off, clearly sensing the flimsiness of his excuse. "But in 5 months of marriage, you never mentioned her existence? Never thought to explain why you have another woman's name permanently inked on your body?" Emily shook her head, a humorless laugh escaping her. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Before he could answer, a doctor entered, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Reynolds, your test results confirm influenza type A. You're severely dehydrated and showing signs of exhaustion. I'm recommending 24 hours of observation." Emily barely heard the doctor's words. Her attention had fixed on Nate's clothes, neatly folded on a chair in the corner of the room, the edge of a phone, not his usual black iPhone, but a silver one she'd never seen before, peeked from his jacket pocket. "I need to get some things from home if he's staying overnight," Emily said, her mind racing ahead. "Will he be moved to a room soon?" "Yes, we're preparing one now," the doctor confirmed. "The nurse will let you know the room number when he's transferred." Emily nodded, gathering her purse. "I'll be back in a couple of hours then." She leaned over as if to kiss Nate's forehead, something she would normally do, and saw panic flash in his eyes. Instead, she reached past him for his jacket. "I'll bring you some comfortable clothes." As she lifted the jacket, she deliberately let the unfamiliar phone slide into her hand, concealing it in the folds of the fabric. "Rest well," she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. In the hospital parking lot, Emily's hands trembled so badly she could barely unlock her car. Jessica, who had been waiting, rushed over. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." Emily held up the silver phone. "He has a tattoo. Vanessa, with a kiss mark. And this phone I've never seen before." The reality of what she was saying, the implications, hit her fully for the first time. "He's been cheating on me, Jess. The whole time." Jessica's face darkened with anger. "That absolute bastard." "It gets worse," Emily said, her voice breaking. "The nurse called me Vanessa when she brought me to his room, like she expected Vanessa to be there instead of me." She looked up at her friend, tears blurring her vision. "What if I'm not even his real wife? What if I'm the other woman and don't know it? We need to find out exactly what's going on," Jessica said with quiet intensity, taking the silver phone from Emily's shaking hands. "Can you unlock it?" Emily stared at the device, a foreign object representing a life her husband had deliberately kept hidden from her. "I don't know the passcode, but..." A thought occurred to her. It might have fingerprint access. Nate uses that on his regular phone. "Worth a try," Jessica agreed. "Let's go to my place. I don't think you should be alone right now, and certainly not in that house." 20 minutes later, they sat at Jessica's kitchen table, the silver phone between them like a ticking bomb. Emily pressed Nate's thumbprint to the sensor when they'd picked up his jacket, a trick that had made her feel like a spy in a movie, her heart thundering so loudly she was sure the nurse would hear it. Now, she took a deep breath and pressed the home button with Nate's registered thumb. The phone unlocked. "It worked," Emily whispered, almost afraid of what they would find. The wallpaper was a photo that made Emily's stomach turn. Nate, with his arms around a beautiful woman with caramel-colored hair, both of them laughing against a beach sunset backdrop. They looked blissfully happy, undeniably intimate. The woman, Vanessa presumably, wore a thin gold band on her left ring finger that matched the one on Nate's hand. "Oh my God," Jessica breathed, her eyes wide with shock. I think he's married to her too, Emily finished, her voice hollow. Or was before me. Maybe still is. With trembling fingers, Emily opened the messaging app. Multiple conversations appeared, but one with V topped the list. The most recent exchange had occurred just yesterday. V. Missing you like crazy. When can you get away from her? Nate. Soon. The old lady's health is declining fast. Once that's settled, we'll have everything we need. V. I hate sharing you with her. It's been months. Nate. Patience, baby. Remember what's at stake. $5.2 million at last count. V. Better be worth it. Love you. Nate. Always. Only you. This is our future we're building. Emily scrolled up through months of similar exchanges. Declarations of love to Vanessa. Complaints about having to maintain the charade with Emily. Detailed discussions of Martha's declining health and the expected inheritance. The casual cruelty of it stole Emily's breath away. He married me for my grandmother's money, she said, her voice unnaturally calm. They've been planning this together, waiting for Grandma to die so they can take her money and disappear. Jessica reached across the table and gripped Emily's ice-cold hand. This is beyond cheating, Em. This is fraud. These texts are evidence of a conspiracy. Emily continued scrolling, unable to stop herself from witnessing the full extent of the betrayal. Then she froze, a new horror dawning as she read an exchange from 2 weeks before their wedding. V. What if she wants kids right away? Nate. Not a chance. I've got the separate bedrooms plan all mapped out. Sleep issues, remember? She's so naive she'll believe anything. V. You're brilliant, babe. Just make sure you don't slip up and develop actual feelings for this Emily girl. Nate. As if. You're the only woman I'll ever love. Once we have the money, she'll be nothing but a bad memory. A strangled sound escaped Emily's throat. He planned it all. The separate bedrooms, the excuses. It was never about sleep issues or personal problems. It was so he wouldn't have to touch me. Hot tears of humiliation and rage spilled down her cheeks. They've been laughing at me this whole time. Emily, Jessica said firmly, taking the phone and setting it aside. Listen to me. You are the victim here. They are the ones who should be ashamed, not you. Emily buried her face in her hands. How could I have been so blind? So stupid? You weren't stupid. You were trusting, Jessica corrected. And they exploited that trust in the most vile way possible. She paused, her expression hardening. The question now is, what are you going to do about it? Emily looked up, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. What can I do? If I confront him, he'll just deny everything or spin some new lie. You have evidence right here. Jessica tapped the phone. And you said your grandmother's health is declining? Emily nodded, a new worry surfacing. She had a fall yesterday. That's why I was at the facility when Nate collapsed. Then we need to protect her assets before these vultures can get their hands on them. Jessica's eyes gleamed with determination. My brother's a lawyer, remember? He specializes in elder law. He can help us figure out the best approach. For the first time since finding the tattoo, a flicker of hope sparked in Emily's chest. You think we can stop them? I think, Jessica said with quiet ferocity, that Nate and his girlfriend picked the wrong woman to scam. 3 hours later, Emily sat across from Jessica's brother Michael in his downtown law office, the evidence laid out before him. Screenshots of the incriminating texts, photos Emily had taken of the mysterious tattoo while Nate slept in his hospital bed, and marriage records they'd found showing that Nathaniel Reynolds had indeed married a Vanessa Mitchell in Las Vegas 2 years before his wedding to Emily. Bigamy is a felony, Michael explained, his expression grave. And the conspiracy to defraud your grandmother makes this even more serious. We could go to the police right now if you want. Emily considered this, picturing Nate in handcuffs, publicly humiliated. Part of her, the wounded, betrayed part, craved that vindication. But another part hesitated. If we go to the police now, it becomes a public scandal, she said slowly. My grandmother would be devastated. The stress might be too much for her in her current state. Michael nodded understanding. There are other approaches. Given what we know about their plan, we could set a trap of our own. What kind of trap? Emily asked, her interest piqued. Something that makes them think they've succeeded, when in fact they've failed spectacularly. Michael began outlining a plan that made a small, vindictive smile spread across Emily's face. By the time she returned to the hospital that evening, Emily had a document folder tucked into her purse and a newfound calm settling over her. The nurse directed her to Nate's private room, where he lay watching television, his color much improved. "Hey," he said cautiously when she entered. "I was starting to worry." "Sorry it took so long," Emily replied with a smile she didn't feel. "I had some things to take care of." She set a small overnight bag on the visitor's chair. "I brought you some comfortable clothes for tomorrow." "Thanks," he said, studying her face carefully. "About what you saw earlier, I can explain everything." Emily perched on the edge of his bed, her heart hammering, but her expression perfectly composed. "You mean the tattoo? Don't worry about it. We all have pasts, right? I trust you completely." The relief that washed over Nate's face was almost comical. He reached for her hand, and it took everything in Emily not to flinch away from his touch. "That means everything to me. I promise. It's ancient history. I believe you," she lied, squeezing his hand before pulling away naturally. "The doctor says you can come home tomorrow if your fever stays down. I'll come pick you up." As she left the hospital, Emily felt strangely light, almost euphoric. The crushing weight of confusion and inadequacy that had plagued her for months had lifted, replaced by cold, clear purpose. The man she had married was a fraud, a criminal who had targeted her for her grandmother's money. But now, for the first time in their relationship, Emily had the upper hand, and she intended to use it. The next afternoon, Emily drove Nate home from the hospital in tense silence. He attempted small talk several times, but her one-word responses eventually discouraged him. When they arrived at the house, she helped him inside with mechanical politeness, setting him up on the living room couch with water, medication, and the remote control within reach. "Are you sure everything's okay?" Nate asked, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You seem different." Emily arranged her features into a concerned smile. "I'm just worried about you, that's all. And I didn't sleep well last night." That, at least, wasn't a lie. She'd spent most of the night at Jessica's apartment, finalizing their plan and wrestling with the devastating reality of her marriage. "Do you need anything else before I head out? You're leaving?" Nate's voice held a note of alarm. "Just for a couple of hours. Grandma Martha called this morning. She wants me to bring her some things from home." Emily watched his face carefully, noting how he tried to mask his interest at the mention of her grandmother. "How is she doing?" he asked, his tone casual but eyes sharp. "Not great," Emily sighed, the lie coming easily now. "The doctor thinks it could be a matter of weeks." She pretended not to notice how Nate's fingers tightened around his water glass, or the calculating look that flashed across his face. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said, reaching for her hand. "Maybe I should come with you to see her soon, once I'm feeling better." Emily nodded, withdrawing her hand under the pretense of checking her watch. "That would be nice. I know she'd appreciate it." She picked up her purse, pausing by the coffee table where she'd deliberately left a manila folder. "Oh, I meant to file this away. It's just some paperwork from yesterday." Nate's eyes tracked the folder, just as she'd intended. "Paperwork? Nothing important," Emily said, with a dismissive wave. "Just some forms related to Grandma's estate. I'll put it away when I get back." She moved toward the door, calling over her shoulder. "There's soup in the fridge if you get hungry. Back in a couple of hours." Instead of driving to her grandmother's facility, Emily parked down the street from their house, just out of sight. She texted Jessica. "Left the bait. Now we wait." Jessica's reply came instantly. "Camera working. I can see everything." Before leaving that morning, Emily had set up a small camera disguised as a picture frame on the bookshelf opposite the couch. Jessica's idea, borrowed from her gallery's security system. Now, watching on her phone, Emily saw Nate wait exactly 3 minutes after her departure before struggling to his feet. He moved with purpose toward the coffee table, all signs of weakness suddenly gone. Emily watched, her jaw clenched, as Nate opened the folder and began reading the document inside, a fake inheritance renunciation form that Michael had helped create, complete with official-looking letterhead and Emily's signature. The document stated that Emily was voluntarily renouncing her rights to Martha Sutton's estate, redirecting her portion to charity instead. The camera caught Nate's expression perfectly as understanding dawned. First confusion, then disbelief, finally rage. He fumbled for his phone, his regular one, and Emily's own phone rang seconds later. She let it go to voicemail, smiling grimly as she watched him curse and toss his phone aside. Next, he reached for the silver phone that Emily had returned to his jacket pocket in the hospital, carefully wiped of her fingerprints. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could read his agitated body language as he paced back and forth, gesturing emphatically. 20 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled into their driveway. Emily ducked down in her seat as a woman emerged, tall, with caramel-colored hair pulled back in a sophisticated twist. Vanessa. She was even more beautiful in person, dressed expensively in a fitted blazer and designer jeans. Emily felt a fresh stab of humiliation, quickly followed by anger. Through the camera feed, Emily watched as Nate let Vanessa in, immediately thrusting the document toward her. Vanessa's perfectly made-up face contorted as she read, her free hand flying to her mouth. They spoke animatedly, Vanessa occasionally hitting Nate's chest with her palm in frustration. Emily's phone vibrated with a text from Jessica. "Should we move to phase 2? "Not yet," Emily typed back. "I want to see what they do next." She didn't have to wait long. After a heated discussion, Nate and Vanessa appeared to reach a decision. Vanessa stormed out, slamming the front door behind her. Through the camera, Emily saw Nate return to the couch, looking defeated. He reached for a bottle of whiskey on the side table, pouring himself a generous glass despite his medication. Emily gave it another 30 minutes before driving back to the house, schooling her features into neutral pleasantness as she entered. Nate looked up from his third whiskey, his eyes slightly unfocused. "You're back," he said flatly. Emily set down her purse, pretending not to notice his disheveled appearance or the empty glass in his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Confused," Nate said, his voice hard. "Why didn't you tell me you were giving up your inheritance?" Emily froze, as if caught off guard. "You went through my papers?" "I saw the folder," he said, not bothering to lie. "Why, Emily? That's millions of dollars. Your grandmother wanted you to have it." Emily sank into an armchair, maintaining the charade. "I've been thinking about it for a while. Before we even met, actually." She met his gaze steadily. "I never wanted to be defined by Grandma's money. I wanted to make my own way. And now that I have you, a husband with a good job, a partner to build a life with, it feels like the right time." Nate stared at her, searching for deception. "You can't be serious. That's your birthright." "It's my choice," Emily said firmly. "The money will do more good going to charity than sitting in our bank account. We don't need it, Nate. We have each other." She reached for his hand, forcing herself not to recoil when their skin touched. "Isn't that enough?" Something darkened in Nate's eyes. Frustration, calculation, maybe even panic. "Of course," he said after a beat too long. I want you to be sure. This isn't something you can take back." "I'm sure," Emily said, rising from her chair. "I've already filed the paperwork. It's done." She started toward the kitchen. "Are you hungry? I could make some dinner." "Actually," Nate said slowly, "I think I need to rest. This fever must be coming back." "Of course," Emily nodded, watching as he made his way to his bedroom, still separate from hers, still locked at night. "Let me know if you need anything." Alone in the kitchen, Emily leaned against the counter, trembling with a mixture of rage and triumph. She texted Jessica. He took the bait completely. "Vanessa already came over. They're panicking." "Perfect," Jessica replied. "Tomorrow we spring the trap." That night, Emily lay awake in her bed, listening to the occasional creak of floorboards as Nate moved around in his room next door. Once, she heard his muffled voice. Another secret call to Vanessa, no doubt. She wondered what desperate plans they were hatching, what lies they were constructing. For the first time in 5 months, the knowledge that her husband was sleeping in a separate room brought Emily not pain, but satisfaction. Soon, he would be sleeping in a separate house, a separate life, and she would be free of the elaborate deception that had been her marriage. Emily turned onto her side, a cold smile playing at her lips in the darkness. Tomorrow would bring the final act of a play she hadn't known she was in, but this time, she was writing the ending. Morning arrived with the sound of Nate moving around the house, his footsteps more purposeful than they had been since his hospital stay. Emily lay still, listening as he opened and closed drawers in the bathroom, then retreated to his bedroom. She checked her phone, a message from Jessica, confirming that everything was set for 10 o'clock. When Emily finally emerged from her room, dressed casually in jeans and a light sweater, she found Nate in the kitchen making coffee. He looked better than he had any right to, his color restored, his movements fluid and confident. not at all like a man recovering from a serious bout of influenza. "Morning," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Coffee?" "Please," Emily replied, sliding onto a kitchen stool. She observed him covertly, noting the tense set of his shoulders, the way his eyes darted to the clock every few minutes. He was waiting for something, or someone. They sipped their coffee in uncomfortable silence until Nate cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about what you told me yesterday, about the inheritance." Emily raised her eyebrows, expression deliberately innocent. "What about it?" "I think you're making a mistake," he said bluntly. "That money was meant for you. Your grandmother worked her whole life to build that fortune, which is exactly why I want to honor her work by using it for something meaningful," Emily countered. "The Martinez Family Foundation does amazing things for underprivileged children. Grandma would approve." A muscle twitched in Nate's jaw. "You didn't even discuss it with me first. That's not how marriage works, Emily. Like sleeping in separate bedrooms for 5 months is how marriage works." The words escaped before she could stop them, sharper than she had intended. Nate had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. "That's different. I've explained your sleep issues. I know." Emily set down her mug with deliberate care. "Strange how they never seem to affect you during the day, or when you're away on business trips." Something shifted in Nate's expression. Wariness, calculation. "What are you saying?" "Nothing," Emily sighed, playing her part. "I'm just tired, Nate. Tired of feeling like I'm living with a roommate instead of a husband." Nate came around the counter then, approaching her with an expression of practiced concern. He took her hands in his, and it required every ounce of Emily's self-control not to pull away. "I know these past months haven't been easy. I've been distant, but things are going to change, I promise." "Really?" Emily asked, injecting just the right amount of hope into her voice. "How?" "I've been thinking we should get away together. Take a real vacation, just the two of us." His thumbs traced small circles on the backs of her hands, a gesture that once would have thrilled her. "Maybe the Caribbean or Europe. Somewhere we can reconnect." Emily tilted her head, studying him. The audacity was almost impressive. "That sounds expensive." "We can afford it," Nate said smoothly. "My year-end bonus is coming up. And..." He hesitated, as if reluctant to continue. "I know you've made your decision about the inheritance, but maybe we could use just a small portion for ourselves before it's all gone. A last gift from your grandmother, to help us build our future together." And there it was, the real reason for this sudden display of affection. Not contrite husband seeking reconciliation, but desperate con man trying to salvage something from his failed scheme. "I'd like that," Emily said, allowing a small smile. The doorbell rang before Nate could respond, and relief flashed briefly across his face. He'd been stalling, she realized, waiting for someone. "I'll get it," Nate said, releasing her hands and moving quickly toward the front door. Emily heard murmured voices. Then Nate returned with Jessica's brother Michael behind him. Nate's expression was a mask of confusion. "Emily, this gentleman says he's your lawyer?" The question in his voice was genuine. This wasn't the visitor he'd been expecting. "Hello, Michael," Emily greeted him calmly, as they'd rehearsed. "Thank you for coming. Please, have a seat." Michael nodded professionally, setting his briefcase on the coffee table as they moved to the living room. "Mrs. Reynolds." "Mr. Reynolds." He pulled out several documents, arranging them methodically. "I have the final paperwork regarding Mrs. Sutton's estate, as you requested." Nate's confusion deepened. "I thought that was already taken care of. The renunciation." "Oh, that," Emily said with a dismissive wave. "That was just a draft. There were some details we needed to iron out." Michael cleared his throat. "Actually, Mrs. Sutton has made some significant changes to her will and estate plan. Given her declining health, she wanted these matters settled immediately." He turned to Emily. "As you instructed, I've prepared documents establishing an irrevocable trust for your inheritance. Once Mrs. Sutton passes, the funds will be placed in trust with you as the sole beneficiary, with strict provisions regarding how the money can be accessed and by whom." Emily watched Nate's face carefully, noting the exact moment understanding dawned, followed swiftly by poorly concealed panic. "What does that mean, exactly?" Nate asked, his voice strained. "It means," Michael explained with professional detachment, "that the funds cannot be accessed by anyone other than Emily, cannot be transferred to joint accounts, and cannot be used as collateral for loans. Additionally, in the event of divorce, the funds remain entirely separate from marital assets." Nate's face had gone pale, his knuckles white where he gripped the arm of the sofa. I see. And this is final? The papers were filed with the court yesterday, Michael confirmed. Mrs. Sutton has already signed her approval. The doorbell rang again, and this time Emily rose. That must be Jessica. I asked her to join us, but when she opened the door, it wasn't Jessica standing on their porch. It was Vanessa, immaculately dressed in a form-fitting red dress, her caramel hair falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. She looked momentarily startled to see Emily, clearly having expected Nate. Oh, Vanessa recovered quickly, extending a manicured hand. You must be Emily. I'm Vanessa Mitchell, a colleague of Nate's from the investment firm. He mentioned he wasn't feeling well, so I thought I'd drop by some files he needs to review. She held up a manila folder similar to the one Emily had used as bait the day before. Emily shook the offered hand, noting the gold band on Vanessa's left ring finger. How thoughtful of you. Please, come in. Nate's in the living room with our lawyer. We're just finishing up some paperwork regarding my grandmother's estate. Vanessa's step faltered almost imperceptibly. Oh, I don't want to interrupt. Nonsense, Emily said brightly, leading her into the living room. This concerns Nate, so I'm sure he'd want his colleague present, especially one he works so closely with. Nate's face when he saw Vanessa enter the room behind Emily was a study in pure terror. He half rose from the sofa, then sank back down as his legs seemed to give out. Vanessa, he choked out. What are you doing here? Bringing you those files you asked for, Vanessa replied smoothly, though her eyes darted nervously between Nate, Emily, and the lawyer. I can come back later if this isn't a good time. Actually, Emily said, her voice hardening as she dropped all pretense. This is a perfect time. Please join us. Michael was just explaining how my grandmother's fortune will be placed in an irrevocable trust with provisions that prevent my husband from accessing it. Ever. She turned to Nate, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. Isn't that interesting, honey? Especially considering all those texts you exchanged with Vanessa about how you were going to take my inheritance once Grandma died? The room went utterly still. Michael, who had been briefed on the situation, remained professional, but watchful. Vanessa's perfect composure cracked, her eyes widening in alarm. I don't know what you're talking about, she began, but Emily cut her off. Save it. Emily pulled out her phone, opening the gallery app to display photos she'd taken of the incriminating text messages. I found your secret phone, Nate. I know everything. About your real marriage to Vanessa. About your plan to marry me for my grandmother's money. About how you've been laughing at me for months while keeping me at arm's length. Nate stood abruptly, desperation radiating from him. Emily, this is all a misunderstanding. Is it? Emily's voice was ice. Is it a misunderstanding that you have Vanessa's name tattooed on your thigh? That you've been married to her for over 2 years? That you committed bigamy when you married me? Vanessa backed toward the door, her face drained of color. I should go. No one is going anywhere, came a new voice from the doorway. Jessica stood there, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers. Except maybe to the police station. Nate looked wildly from Emily to Vanessa to the officers, his carefully constructed world collapsing around him. This is all a mistake, he insisted, his voice cracking. I can explain everything. One of the officers stepped forward. Mr. Reynolds, we'd like you to come down to the station to answer some questions regarding allegations of fraud and bigamy. As the officers led a protesting Nate toward the door, Vanessa attempted to slip past Jessica, only to find her path blocked. Don't worry, Jessica said coolly. They have questions for you too, Mrs. Reynolds. Or is it Mitchell? I'm never sure which name bigamists prefer. 3 weeks later, Emily stood in her grandmother's sunlit room at Sunrise Living, carefully arranging fresh peonies in a crystal vase. Martha Sutton watched from her armchair by the window, her keen blue eyes missing nothing. Those are lovely, she remarked, but you're fussing. Something on your mind? Emily smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Just nervous about the hearing tomorrow, I guess. Psh! Martha waved a dismissive hand. Michael says the case is airtight. Bigamy, conspiracy to defraud, identity theft. They're looking at serious jail time, especially after they found those other victims. The investigation had uncovered that Emily wasn't Nate and Vanessa's first target. There had been 2 other wealthy women before her, both left financially devastated by the couple's schemes. The discovery had transformed Emily's private humiliation into something larger and more significant. Her testimony would help ensure justice not just for herself, but for others who had been deceived. I know, Emily sighed, finally abandoning the flowers to sit opposite her grandmother. It's not that. It's just facing them again, admitting in public how completely fooled I was. Martha reached across to take Emily's hand, her paper-thin skin cool against Emily's palm. There's no shame in having been deceived by experts, my dear. The shame belongs entirely to them. I keep wondering if I should have seen it, Emily confessed. There were so many signs. The separate bedrooms, the emotional distance, the convenient business trips. How could I have believed him for so long? Because you're a good person who expects others to be good too, Martha said firmly. That's not weakness, Emily. That's character. She squeezed Emily's hand. Besides, you figured it out in the end, didn't you? And rather spectacularly, I might add. That drew a genuine laugh from Emily. I did have some help. Yes, that Jessica is a keeper, Martha agreed. And speaking of keepers, Martha's keen eyes twinkled mischievously. Michael seems quite taken with you. Emily felt her cheeks warm. Grandma, he's just been helping with the case. He's my lawyer. He's been here 3 times this week alone, and I don't think those visits were all strictly legal consultations. Martha raised an eyebrow. The way he looks at you reminds me of how your grandfather used to look at me. It's too soon, Emily protested, though she couldn't deny the flutter of interest she'd felt during their long strategy sessions and late-night talks. Michael was kind, intelligent, and genuinely outraged on her behalf, qualities that had become increasingly apparent as they worked together. Nonsense, Martha declared. What you had with Nate wasn't a real marriage. It was a fiction, a performance. You've lost nothing of value there, only gained freedom from deception. Emily considered this. Her grandmother, as usual, had cut straight to the heart of the matter. The grief she'd felt wasn't for the loss of a true relationship, but for the illusion of one, for the future she'd thought she was building. Maybe you're right, she conceded, but I think I need some time for myself first, to figure out who I am without all this drama. Martha nodded approvingly. Wise decision. Though I don't plan on lingering in this place forever, so don't take too long. I'd like to dance at your next wedding. Your real one. Grandma? Emily laughed, though the sound caught in her throat. Martha's health had improved remarkably since the whole ordeal began, as if the excitement had rejuvenated her, but they both knew her time was limited. You're getting ahead of yourself. That's the privilege of age, my dear, Martha said with a small smile, looking ahead while others are still catching up to the present. Later that evening, Emily returned to the house, no longer thinking of it as home, to continue packing. She'd decided to sell the property, unable to imagine building a new life in spaces so thoroughly tainted by deception. Jessica had offered her guest room until Emily found a place of her own, an arrangement that brought comfort to them both. As she carefully wrapped photographs in newspaper, her phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. Just checking in before tomorrow, he said when she answered. How are you holding up? Better than expected, Emily replied, cradling the phone between ear and shoulder as she continued wrapping frames. Grandma gave me one of her patented pep talks. Michael chuckled. Martha Sutton is a force of nature. The judge should just put her on the stand. Nate and Vanessa would probably confess to everything on the spot. Don't tempt me, Emily said, smiling despite herself. I might suggest it. A comfortable silence settled between them, neither rushing to fill it. Finally, Michael spoke again, his tone more hesitant. I was thinking, after all this is over, maybe we could grab dinner sometime. Not to discuss the case, just dinner. Emily's hands stilled on the half-wrapped photo frame, a picture of herself from before, smiling at a camera with trusting eyes. She studied her own face, remembering the woman she had been, and acknowledging the stronger, wiser person she was becoming. I'd like that, she said softly, but let's get through tomorrow first. Of course, Michael agreed, the relief in his voice palpable. One step at a time. After they hung up, Emily returned to her packing with renewed purpose. In a box marked Donate, she placed the wedding album she'd once cherished, now a record of elaborate fiction rather than genuine commitment. The weight lifted from her shoulders as she closed the lid, sealing away that chapter of her life. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Emily dressed carefully in a tailored navy dress that Jessica had helped her select. Professional, confident, survivor rather than victim. As she applied a final touch of lipstick, her phone chimed with a text from Jessica. Cars outside. Ready to take down the bad guys? Emily took one last look around the bedroom that had been her solitary refuge in a house of lies. Soon, this would all be behind her. The sham marriage, the betrayal, the humiliation. Soon, she would begin again on her own terms, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for her. "Ready?" she texted back. In the hallway, Emily paused by Nate's bedroom door, still locked from the inside, though he hadn't set foot in the house since his arrest. With deliberate movements, she removed a small key from her pocket, unlocked the door, and pushed it open. Sunlight streamed through the windows onto empty drawers and bare closet rods, the room already cleared of his belongings by the police investigation. There was nothing left of him here, nothing left of the life she had believed in so completely. Emily felt not sadness, but a profound sense of liberation as she closed the door behind her, leaving it unlocked. The house would go to new owners, who would fill these rooms with their own stories, their own truths. Outside, Jessica waited by her car, her smile encouraging. Beyond her, Emily could see Michael arriving in his own vehicle, ready to accompany them to the courthouse, where Nate and Vanessa would face the consequences of their actions. "You know," Jessica said as Emily approached, "when this is all over, we should take that vacation Nate promised you. Just the two of us. Somewhere with beaches and cocktails and absolutely no complicated men." Emily laughed, the sound genuine and unburdened. "I'd like that." She glanced toward Michael, who was waiting respectfully by his car, giving the friend space. "Though I'm beginning to think not all men are as complicated as I feared." Jessica followed her gaze, a knowing smile spreading across her face. "Well, well. Looks like Martha's inheritance isn't the only thing you're reclaiming. One step at a time," Emily reminded her, climbing into the passenger seat. "First we finish this." As Jessica's car pulled away from the curb, Emily didn't look back at the house. There was no need. Her future lay ahead, not behind. A future she would build on honesty, strength, and the unbreakable bonds of real love, whether romantic or familial, or the steadfast friendship that had helped her survive her darkest days. And this time, she would sleep in whatever bedroom she damn well pleased. And you, what would you do if you discovered your spouse had been deceiving you all along? Would you have the strength to confront them, or would you handle it differently? Leave a like if you enjoyed this story, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional tales like this one. If you enjoyed this story and would like to buy me a coffee, check out the first pinned comment below. Any amount helps. And don't worry, it's completely secure, and I don't have access to any of your personal data. Thank you for staying with me until the end, and I'll see you in the next story.